It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
This is Omobola Stephen, the host of Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. On Life Well Lived, we like to explore topics and subjects on the personal development and self-improvement, offering disruptive mindset conversations, yet constructive in nature with expert and professionals and thought leaders who come to the show with me in order for us to pivot the change and transformation you and I need in the side of eternity. Now, we understand that embracing change and personal development that we need to move from where we are to where we need to be can be very challenging and also painful. But I tell you, if you don't give up and if you are ready and willing to practice the tools and strategies that are provided by the experts and professionals on the show, I tell you that you're going to have a transformation indeed if you don't give up. Now, personal development and self-improvement is a lifelong process. You and I must truly embrace in order for us to have a worthwhile life indeed. Today, I have Duncan Bhaskaran-Brown, who is a speaking author on the show with me. Now, we're talking about alcohol. He's got a lot to talk about it because he also has a first-hand experience on all of these. And so we want to talk about how alcohol is a big problem in the world in general. So welcome to the show with me, Duncan Bhaskaran-Brown. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to getting into it and having a good old chat.
Sure, and so do I. So the first question is just talking about how. Why do you think that alcohol is a big problem?
So I think there's two sort of answers to that question. The simple answer is that it kills a lot of people. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that the leading cause of death and disability between 15 and 49-year-olds is alcohol. And yeah, I mean, it flat out kills people. And that's pretty much as bad as you can get, I guess. But it also has a lot of other impacts on society. You know, it has huge impacts on families, devastating impacts on children and the partners of people who develop alcohol problems. It has obviously big impacts on the individual, both in terms of their physical and mental health, but also in terms of, you know, things like joy and meaning and purpose. It totally gets in the way of those. And so I mean that's the kind of the simple answer. You know, that alcohol is a problem because it ruins people's lives. And more than most people would think, 30% of people who drink are going to end up drinking at the hazardous or harmful level of consumption, which is problem. So 30% of the people that try alcohol are going to end up as problem drinkers, which is pretty serious, I think. But then what I guess goes even further than that is the impact alcohol has on our culture. So it's almost so pervasive that we don't even notice it. I mean, I often say to people, well, we never talk about alcohol. And they sort of laugh at me and they go, yeah, I know people talk about alcohol all the time. We're always talking about, you know, going for some drinks after work, how it's wine o'clock, how we deserve a gin and tonic, you know, how sport is just not the same without a beer. Oh, all right, true. We talk about it in that sense, but we never really talk about it. We never really get into it and start to understand what it's doing to our culture. So it's, you know, I think it's undermining very many things from, you know, businesses to the political process itself.
Right. So let's talk about drinking levels. What's your thoughts on drinking in moderation, the binge drinking, and also heavy alcohol use? Like to share your thoughts.
So first off, heavy alcohol use is a lot less than most people would think. I think that most people have got this picture of what an alcoholic looks like. You know, they haven't washed in a while, they don't have a job, they don't have a house, they don't have a family, you know, because they've lost all of that. And it is true that, you know, you will meet people who get into that category. But actually, the vast majority of people that have drinking problems actually still are clinging on to a job. Some of them are actually quite successful. Most of the people that I work with are fairly senior. They're CEOs, they're leaders, they're, you know, executives, because that's one of the big myths about alcohol. You know, it's not a disease of people without money. It's exactly the opposite. You know, the more you earn, the more you're going to drink. So heavy drinking, I think, is something that we really need to sort of understand in a very, very different way. Binge drinking, again, that's something that I guess a lot of people would assume that's going out and drinking a huge amount on the weekend. But actually, the dictionary definition of binge drinking is 8 British units or more, which is not a lot. I mean, you can get 8 units in, you know, that's less than a bottle of wine. You know, you can probably do that in 4 cans of beer pretty easily. Certainly, if you're measuring the gin yourself, though, you know, it's 3 gin and tonics. So it's actually binge drinking is a lot lower than people think, which I guess tees me up for this kind of like, what does low risk drinking look like? Low risk drinking looks like only ever drinking one drink. Yeah, and that's not really my opinion. That's where the science is at the moment. Anything more than about 2.5 British units every day in a day would be considered, you know, bumping up the risk significantly. And certainly the sort of like 2 drinks, there is a, you know, there is a lot of research out there now about how much of an impact that will have. So 2 drinks is enough to raise your cortisol level by about 18%. And I'm sure your listeners are aware that cortisol is the stress hormone. So if you're drinking to remove stress from your life, I have some terrible news for you. 2 drinks is enough to ruin the quality of your sleep by 24%. And that's the important part of your sleep. That's the deep sleep, you know, the REM sleep, where your brain kind of recharges and lays down memories and processes information and all of the good stuff. So actually, you know, low risk drinking, I think the only way you can genuinely advise people about low risk drinking is say 1 drink 2 or 3 times a week, no more than that.
All right. Talking about the drinking in moderation, binge drinking, and also alcohol use. So, do you think, or which group do you think the World Health Organization recommends should be checked annually for alcohol use? Should we be looking
So
at
there
that?
was a panel of experts convened by the World Health Organization, and they looked at all of the kind of things that are risk factors in terms of, you know, problem drinking. And they recommended quite a number of professions that should be screened annually. And I think the one that always surprises people is business executives. And there's a number of reasons for that. As I alluded to earlier, the more you earn, the more likely you are to drink. So that translates to about 13.5% of the highest earners drinking every day. And there is no way to drink every day and have a healthy relationship with alcohol. Also, there's another very worrying statistic that 47% of the highest earning college graduates are, you know, they would have drunk yesterday. So that means, I mean, who are high earning college graduates? They're lawyers and architects and doctors and the kind of people that you don't want to be hungover. They're the kind of people that you want to have had a decent night's sleep. So even if they've only had a couple of glasses, they've still impacted on their sleep. You know, are they impacting on their ability to do their job? Absolutely, they are. And, you know, these kind of high stress professions, that's part of the reason why people end up getting into a problem with alcohol, because there is this massive illusion of truth in our society that alcohol helps you deal with stress, despite the fact it very obviously actually increases your stress, makes you feel lousy in the morning, and generally doesn't start the day in a very good light, does it? So I think, you know, this is something that a lot of businesses really need to start wising up to, that actually if they want to really embrace the well-being of their people, if they want their people performing at their very best, then they need to become far more alcohol aware.
But really, Duncan, what can lead a person to taking alcohol? I'd like you to share a powerful perspective in this regard.
So could you just repeat that?
Yes, the question is, what can lead a person to taking alcohol?
What can a leader
What can
do?
lead a person to taking alcohol?
Oh,
What
okay.
leads the person to
Sorry.
take alcohol?
Yeah. So what can start people off drinking?
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So we've done some research on this, and what we found was that there are kind of three big buckets that you can stick people in. They're not easily summed up into single reasons, but you can put them into sort of three broad categories. The first being childhood trauma. There is an awful lot of childhood trauma that is out in our world, and that's one of the unfortunate things about society. And another thing that we don't really talk about very much, but it is true. A lot of people have quite traumatic experiences in their childhood, and that leads to a range of problems. And alcohol consumption is one of them. So it's quite often triggered by childhood experiences. We found that there's another big section of people who they kind of start drinking normally, for want of a better word. They drink like all of their other friends. It doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. And then they'll have an event in their adult life, usually a traumatic event. So that would be a divorce, grief, car accident, losing a business, losing their job, something like that. Some big traumatic event. And that will be the catalyst that pushes them over the edge and takes their drinking from what would be considered to be sort of normal-ish, not necessarily healthy, but normal-ish, and pushes them right over into that problem category. So that's the other main sort of bucket. And then finally, there's this group of people who are quite hard to kind of put into one sort of group, but they don't identify trauma as one of the reasons why they drink. So they talk more about things like socializing and being a little bit anxious when they're socializing and starting drinking that way and it progressing, and finding it a bit difficult to fit in, that sort of thing. We also find a lot of people, they end up in a work environment where there's a lot of alcohol consumed, and simply by virtue of the fact that they're consuming a lot of a toxic, addictive substance, they go on to develop a problem with it. So I guess those people are more kind of captured by the drug effect rather than, any sort of internal uncomfortable emotions and things like that. So those are the three big things that lead people to drinking: either unprocessed childhood trauma in their adult life, or just those kind of like small little problems with life that lead you to go on to drink an awful lot and then get into trouble from there.
And now I'm thinking, Duncan, what does the typical day of an alcoholic look like? Now, that's not interesting and personal.
Yeah, so the typical day of an alcoholic, you're very, very varied, but very different from what most people would think. And I will tell you what my typical day was like when I was drinking. I was drinking very heavily. I was drinking probably around 2 bottles of wine every evening. So when I woke up in the morning, I did not feel like sweetness and light. That is true. I would get up as late as legally possible, as it were. I'd be pushing that snooze button, and then I'd jump out of bed and I'd run around trying to find my clothes and trying to get myself dressed as quick as possible, try and get out the door. I'd make it to work, usually late, occasionally on time, usually late. And then I'd make myself a lot of coffee and I'd try and get my head round it and I'd try and get myself started. And I'd basically not really be much good until about lunchtime. I'd work in the afternoon, and then once I'd finished work, I was quite involved in my local community, and I was doing an awful lot. So I would typically have dinner and then go out to an event, to a meeting or something like that, and then I would get home, and around 9 o'clock, that's when I'd start drinking. So actually, if you looked at me, apart from the fact that I was rubbish in the morning and I was a bit tired most of the time, I actually didn't look any different from most people. And if you'd asked me, I mean, I talk a good game, so I would have told you it was all going really, really well. And if you looked at my life, you wouldn't have thought that I had a problem because I was really quite successful. You know, I was doing all right for myself. I was very involved in local government, and I had, I had political leadership roles at a disturbingly young age. So I was doing very well, but I was miserable. And on the inside, none of it really added up. I wasn't actually doing the kind of things that I should be doing, or I wanted to be doing. I think I was living somebody else's life. And like I say, I was miserable all of the time. My relationships were kind of falling apart. I was definitely not performing at my job the way I should have done. So I think the typical day is much the same as the typical day for most people. Just feeling tired, feeling a lot more stressed, low mood, being kind of miserable, and then getting towards the end of the day and just going, "Oh I feel terrible. I better have a drink."
Duncan, I know that you wrote a book on how we can get over indulgence, but I'd like you to share with my audience or juxtapose the relationship between indulgence and alcohol and how a person can get over indulgence.
So I think it's a very interesting word, and I like to talk about overindulgence a lot more than I like to talk about addiction, because most of the people that I work with would not identify as being alcoholic or having an addiction. That's not who they see themselves as. But if you ask them whether they drink too much, you go, "Oh yeah." If you ask them if they overindulge, you go, "Oh yeah." So that's why I use the word overindulgence. But I think it's also very interesting from another point of view. Yeah, why shouldn't we indulge ourselves every now and again? Why shouldn't we do nice things that make us feel better? That is absolutely something that I would encourage people to do. I'm not a monk. Like, I don't live in some Spartan cell and like eat gruel and drink water. I like to indulge myself occasionally. But I think that the problem we have as a society is it's just got a little bit out of hand. People used to drink occasionally at holidays and on special occasions, but now we consider watching Netflix on a Tuesday to be a special occasion, and every day is a holiday. And I think it's kind of summed up by the idea of birthday cake. Realistically, you shouldn't eat birthday cake more than about 12 or 15 times a year. Unless you really have a lot of friends, and a huge extended family. How many birthday parties are you actually going to go to? What, 12, 15 birthday cakes a year makes sense, doesn't it? And if you only eat birthday cake that often, then you'll be all right. The problem is our supermarkets, our shops are full of birthday cake. In fact, you can buy birthday cake ice cream and people eat it every day. And we now just, we just have some birthday cake to finish off lunch. And we've sort of lost the point of it. And we've lost the basic thing about most indulgent things. They're there to celebrate stuff. They're there to be used occasionally because then it really enhances the experience. If you just have it on Tuesday, it doesn't enhance anything. It just ends up pulling you into a trap.
Brilliant, sir. Thank you once again, and Duncan. Can we talk about mental health and drinking connection?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I get quite surprised about, because the world is a lot more open about talking about mental health problems now. And I think that's great. And a lot of, companies have got mental health champions, but they sort of miss the fact that, problem drinking is a mental health condition. If you look at the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Health, which like nobody looks at apart from me and doctors and, people who are too boring to mention. But if you did look at it, you would see that, substance dependence, substance misuse, including alcohol dependence, it's a mental health disorder. But we don't sort of think about it like that. And we don't really talk about mental health and drinking, yet the two are massively interrelated. So it's a kind of push-pull relationship, that there are some mental health problems. I'm sure none of your listeners will be surprised to know that things like PTSD massively increase the chances of you developing a problem with alcohol. And any kind of, traumatic or stressful situations can exacerbate an existing problem things like ADHD, the attention problems, those can massively increase the likelihood of you having a problem with alcohol. So pre-existing mental health conditions, even just generalized anxiety or depression or something like that, increases your chances of having problems with alcohol. But then on the flip side, drinking alcohol increases your chances of having mental health problems. So one fact that I think is very, very much ignored and should be far more widely known is the effect that alcohol has on serotonin. Now, again, I'm sure your listeners have heard of serotonin because that's the chemical that tends to get linked with depression, doesn't it? And in fact, if you're prescribed medication for depression, those antidepressants, they affect your levels of serotonin. But so does alcohol. It just does it in the opposite direction. So alcohol is a pro-depressant. And I think a lot of people are taking antidepressant medication and still drinking, and then wondering why their antidepressant medication doesn't really work. Well, it's because you're drinking alcohol, because you're taking an antidepressant and a pro-depressant, and it just balances itself out. So, yeah, I think absolutely the conversation around mental health needs to change to be more alcohol aware. And I will keep banging that drum until it does.
And tell me, why do real men quit alcohol? Do you have any personal experience to share?
Yeah, so that was the title of my second book, Real Men Quit. And I wanted to write something for men because, like, in general, we are all over the place. We're shouting too much. We're dominating the world. And sorry for that. But the one place that we are woefully quiet is in the sobriety space, in the recovery movement. There are a lot of great women doing a lot of amazing work, and I've got a lot of time and respect for them. But I wanted to write something that was specifically aimed at men because I wanted to write something that would resonate with people when they are drinking. Because if you look at a lot of the literature around stopping drinking, a lot of it really resonates with me now. But I know when I was drinking, it wouldn't have really caught my imagination. So yeah, I decided to write a book specifically to help men to stop drinking. So that's got a lot of sport in it. It's got a lot of James Bond. It's got a lot of Star Wars. It's got a super huge amount of really bad jokes. And yeah, it is very much needed because men drink. According to the World Health Organization, 3 out of every 4 drinks sold across the world are drunk by men. So if we went to a bar, I would have to drink 3 of them and you would have to drink 1 of them. So that's one of the reasons why men are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop a problem with drinking. Why on average men drink 19.6 liters of pure alcohol every year, which translates to about 3.5 bottles a week. 3.5 bottles of wine a week, which is way too much. So it's not a specifically male problem, but we are leading the statistics in terms of having a problem with it, and we're not doing anything about it. And I don't think it will surprise anybody when I say men are not very good at asking for help. So I'm hoping that they will just buy a book and try and sort it out quietly among themselves.
Right, good to know. Thank you so much, Duncan Bhaskaran-Brown. Do you have any exciting news in the pipeline you'd like to share? Perhaps a project that you think is going to be beneficial to the audience in the long run? You can share on this platform, please.
Yeah, so what really excites me at the moment is the work that we're starting to do with organizations and companies to help them bring alcohol awareness to their well-being program. And I think a lot of companies now, they've figured out that well-being and resilience, they're so tied to performance, but they're also tied to retention and recruitment. So, if you've got happy staff, they're more productive, they're more engaged, they stay with you longer. That just decreases so many costs, whether it's healthcare, whether it's recruitment, whether it's efficiency. It just makes pure, plain old economic sense to look after your staff from a physical, mental health point of view, and to look after their well-being and build their resilience. So I think a lot of companies have figured that out, and actually some of the ones that we've been working with are really enjoying it. They see it from a moral point of view. They're actually making a difference to the lives of their staff, which is very, very enjoyable. The bad news is that most well-being programs just don't go anywhere near alcohol. They just don't want to talk about it. They're afraid to talk about it. They shy away from it. And that's something that we very much want to change. And I think, looking at all of those statistics around executive drinking and the problem that alcohol poses to people who are high earners and leaders in society, that's something that we can really, really address. And I'm excited by it precisely because we can get to people a lot earlier. By using sort of diagnostic tools and brief interventions, we can get to people whilst their drinking is creeping up, rather than when it gets to the really problematic levels. So, we can prevent people from getting into trouble with it. And I think that is so much more effective, and it's so much better because, who wants to hit rock bottom before they change? It will motivate you, but it's not much fun. So we try and get people, as they are descending rather than when they've hit the bottom.
Great. Good to know. Once again, Duncan, do you have any social media handles on your website? By the way, I'd like to wish you best of luck in this project that you're embarking upon, Duncan.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so most of the business stuff that we do is on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn quite easily if you can spell Bhaskaran-Brown. Most people can't even pronounce it though. So well done on your pronunciation, by the way. I guess the best way for your listeners to get in touch with me is also, a way they can grab a copy of Get Over Indulgence. So that's a free copy. If they just put getover.uk into the internet, that's getover.uk, that'll take you to a page where you can download the PDF or the Kindle, or if you can stand listening to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes, you can download the audio version. But that is also a page on our website. So you can click through and find us on the socials there. And yeah, I mean, we're pretty busy. We're always putting out interesting tidbits about drinking, how not to do it, and its effect on society and business.
Brilliant. Thank you once again, Duncan Bhaskaran-Brown. Speaking at all, we explore topic in alcohol, how is a big problem in society, and how we can really, turn things around. Thank you once again. And my audience, we wish you best of luck in your projects and the subsequent ones. If you'd like to catch up with any of these episodes of the show, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms online. Do have a great time as you listen to disruptive mindset conversations, yet constructive in nation on topics and subjects of the personal development and self-improvement. If you would like to be a guest on the show, you have incredible insight focusing on personal development and self-improvement, yet they are disruptive in nature to my audience. You can connect me, check my website, www.omobolastv.com, get to know much about me and what I do, and also about podcasts. You can reach out to me. I'll be looking forward to connecting with you. We can be the change that the world is waiting for by pivoting life-transforming content indeed. Thank you once again. It's Omobola Stephen. Talk to you soon. Thank you, Duncan, for your time and for your thoughts.
No, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed that. Was it okay? Was it what you were after?
Great, it was.
Good.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.